This is a special podcast presentation from 700WLW.com. This is Darryl Parks On Demand.
All right, you ready for the facts? If you're a young adult or you're the parent of a child that may be going into college shortly, you ready for these facts? Can you handle them? Can you handle these facts? Youth unemployment is at 17.4%. The average graduating student debt has now reached over $26,000 when they walk out of college. The national debt per capita is almost $47,000, which is the highest ever, which puts the Youth Misery Index at a record high of 90.6. It has grown more than 25% in the last 4 years and 17% since President Obama took office in January of 2009. This is a crisis, and I'm not using that word as tongue-in-cheek crisis like I normally use it, but this is a crisis, an economic crisis that is ready to explode. And to explain, I go to my financial expert and my good friend, 55 KRC Simply Money, Nathan Bacharach. Nathan, how are you?
Darryl, doing great, and it is a mess when you think about it. The only reason that we don't have riots, because this is like when you were young and single and you would go out and you'd meet somebody of the opposite sex. It'd be great to take them home, except when you're living at home, you kind of say, well, don't mind my mom and dad while we go upstairs to party.
Or in the basement.
Yeah, or the basement or the attic, whichever, happens to be for you. It's really hard what was the old joke? The revolution will not be televised. It's really hard to riot when you got to go home and have your parents ask you why you got in so late.
Yeah, last April we watched on TV, and one of the things that, and I feel stupid about this, but we heard, we saw the riots happening in countries like Egypt. And this is where I felt stupid. I had no idea how young those countries were. And when you look at the average age of this country, and the average age continues to gray, when you look at some of the older European countries like Italy and Greece, the population is actually regressing. But when you look at the young demographics in some of those Middle Eastern countries, and then you look at that and say, well, that can never happen in America. Well, the unrest stemmed from the lack of opportunity. And that is what's happening now with college debt that can't be discharged. You're walking away basically with, think about that. You walk out of 4 or 5 years of college with a debt of $30,000 that you're going to have to pay off for the rest of your life.
And it doesn't go away.
Right. And then there's the employment opportunities are not very good for this younger demographic.
No, unemployment is lousy. And even the rate right now, it used to be, and this is amazing, the quiet little stat, it used to be that about 65% of graduates would graduate and then come home. Now, you hear that number and you 2 out of every 3 coming home? Wow. Well, it's up to over 80% now, because if there's no place to go, and it's been actually compounded by the housing problem. Listen to this. There's lots of houses out there that are vacant. Nobody wants to buy them because it's expensive to buy a house, and you might move tomorrow, and you're not really very flexible. If the employer calls up and says, I'm in Dayton, or I'm in Minneapolis, or I'm in LA, selling a house and moving, that is a whole nother deal these days. Nobody wants to do that. But the vacancy rate among rentals, even if you wanted to form a household, which we can talk about household formation and what goes into that, even if you wanted to rent, the vacancy rate is now down to 6%, meaning even if all the college grads pulled together and said, well, let's take what the money we're mooching off of mom and dad, or we've got in our savings and move somewhere, there's no place to move because the rentals are all full up. So where do you go?
A stat. This is incredible. When you look at a demographic, and you look at this younger demographic of, and the demographic I saw was 16 to 29, that 55% of that demographic is employed.
Yep.
Conversely, 45% is unemployed.
Yep, it's tough. And older workers are saying, I don't think I'm retiring anytime soon, because right now they did a poll, and here's what happens. If it happens, for every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. All right? Ask people today, new survey out, just for you. Ask people today how long they plan to work. And they say they plan to work till they're 80 years old, 80 years old. And the problem with that is that their life expectancy is 78. So they're going to keep on working even after they're dead. Mm-hmm. Translation, can't do it. I think over half the people who hit age 65 have less than $25,000 in savings. So the real question was, did anybody really in their heart of hearts, when they looked in the mirror, when they looked at their bank accounts and their investment accounts, say, I'm not really retired, and forget it. And so all I'm going to do is when they cut back my salary or my benefits when I'm 62 or 65 or 68 or whatever, I'll just use Social Security to offset it. I'll keep working. I'll make up the difference. And let's be clear, when you go into a McDonald's and you see somebody 70-year-olds working there, they are not working there for the social interaction, folks, to be interacting with young folks so that they'll be young at heart. They're there to pay bills.
Is that, to your point there, is that part of the issues where you have people coming out of school, out of college, and they can't find jobs?
Yeah, thank you for finishing. I haven't had the whole cup of coffee yet. Yeah, because the thought is if they don't leave the workforce at the back end, there's no front end. And so that's what happens. Now, we just saw a survey. This is hot off the presses. We just saw a survey. When you hear the stat, well, we don't have workers trained. And so you think, and we've got Gateway Community College doing advanced manufacturing. All you got to do is have a high school degree. You should be going down there. They're going wanting for people to learn how to do advanced manufacturing right here in Cincinnati. There's 150 people should be in that program getting jobs next year. They're not. Okay. However, when we've heard, well, we don't lack the skills and the training, and the workforce is changing, and jobs are moving somewhere else. An American worker, for as lousy as you may think they are, is 6 times more productive than somebody in China. But here's the deal: they've uncovered the code word. All kind of politicians have code words for different things that really apply to somebody. Here's the code words. Well, our workers aren't trained. Great. Go below the statistics. You know what they're not trained in? They don't come to work on time. They're not courteous. And they say, well, we need basic skills. Oh, are we talking algebra? No. We're talking adding, subtracting, multiplying, and dividing.
They need basic work skills. And here's the problem with that. The basic work skills, where are those developed? Those are developed when you start working. A part of being employed, all right, is understanding certainly interpersonal communication, social interaction, and all that.
For sure.
But it's also learning responsibility and showing up to work on time.
Yeah. Everybody wants the job with the desk, with the office, and we look at 30 Rock and think everybody's just running around, playing around and having affairs and everything is fun and games. Probably what you miss from 30 Rock is that they're there at 6 a.m. and they're there at 7 at night. Right? So there's a reason why they climbed up the food chain at 30 Rock, but that gets missed. And everybody wants the reward. Nobody wants to work. Showing up on time. All right? Cleaning up your Facebook page, maybe. So Gen Yers, by the way, are notorious for having profanity and lewd pictures. All right, so if you're one of those, go clean up your Facebook page fast, because every employer looks at it. I mean, there's just no concept of what a real work. We've lost a work ethic, and we don't. People don't know how to write a paragraph. Subject, noun, predicate. People, really? So being able to communicate, get there early, leave late. Work hard, know how to construct a sentence, know how to stand up in public, know how to listen and follow directions. These are the basic skills we're missing. It's not, can you work a CAD/CAM machine? It's not do you know all the fancy computer programs? No, it's, can you just do all the basics that in 1970 we thought were basic? And so, we spent a lot of time, of course, blaming the public schools, K through 12. All right. Well, in 1970, if you graduated from high school and you went to college, you were one of 10% of the country who was going to get a college degree. 10% of the country, 1970. All right? Right before the Arab oil embargo of 73, 10% of the country had a college degree. It meant something. A third of the country now has a college degree. And I will tell you, my alma mater, I'm wearing their shirt today, Hofstra, has a whole program. They charge $45,000 a year for a tuition. Thank goodness my daughter didn't go there. And when you go there, they check you out. And they looked at my daughter's resume from Sycamore, and they decided, not knowing anything else about an Ohio public school, that she could come to Hofstra, $45,000 a year, and she had to take remedial courses. Well, she was so highly insulted. She went to Miami and she's knocking down great grades, but they said they have a program for remedial training because they're convinced They're getting $45,000 a year from people, and they're convinced they don't yet know how to read and write, and they've got to teach them that in college. Give me a break.
And Sycamore Township schools are good schools.
Oh, I was ready to call up the president.
What remedial what?
English,
math, all the
math.
basic stuff.
I'm guessing you can't be remedial on history because history's history.
Well, if you have a child heading towards school, Nathan has some tips on how to finance this, or at the very least, how not to get yourself so upside down you're never going to be able to pay the way out of that college loan. We'll continue with Nathan Bacharach of 55 KRC Simply Money on the big one, 700 WLW. Fine domestic drought. Fox 19 storm tracker forecast from meteorologist Steve Horsemeyer for today. Cloudy, cold, maybe some sun this afternoon with a high today of 32. Tomorrow, 50 under cloudy skies, rain and thunder late in the afternoon and into the evening hours. 50 on Monday, and this week, temperatures like on Thursday, I think it is, it's going to be in the mid-50s. So this almost spring-like weather continues toward the end of January. 23 at 700 WLW. I'm Darryl Parks. Nathan Bacharach of 55 KRC Simply Money in studio with me this morning, talking about, it's not hopelessness with kids that are graduating, but the misery index, when you look at the youth unemployment rate, and this is youth between the ages of 18 and 29, the unemployment rate is almost 18%. The average graduating student debt is now record-breaking at almost $27,000, and the national debt per capita is almost $47,000. That's you, parents. And if you add all those things up, the misery index is almost 91 for the youth, and that is record-breaking. It's gone up about 17% in the last 3 years. So you're a parent, and you have your kids. They may be in junior high school, and they're almost ready to go to school. You're in your early 40s. First of all, as far as advice to the kid, what should they study, Nathan?
Well, wait a second. Wait a minute. First, I'm going to give you the Simply Money 3 rules of the road that everybody, parents and kids, need to know, and then see where you fit on this before we get down to the specifics.
What should they study, Nathan?
Wait a minute. Number 1, don't get married. Number 2, if you get married, don't have kids. And number 3, if you get married and you do have kids, don't get divorced. If you break those rules, I can't help you.
What'd you say about divorce again?
Don't get divorced. I didn't do that one either. That's why I'm still in studio working on a Saturday morning. All right? Now, what should they study? They better study
Wasn't
something.
the worst thing I ever went through.
No, it was good. I call it my practice marriage. Listen, I learned how to say yes, dear, so by the second time around, that was much better. You learn a skill that you can use. So if you're a fine arts major, you ought to drive home. Besides being careful in this weather today, be very careful about whether or not you want to invest a tremendous amount of money in that, unless you're willing to also invest another 2 years or a year in some program so that you can actually get a skill. I got a bachelor's of arts degree. Oh, that got me a lot in English history. Okay. So I went back and I actually got
why did you do that? I mean, let's go back when you were in college. This was a few decades ago, but when you were in college, I mean, you did the Bachelor of Arts in English, and did you have aspirations of being a professor, a English teacher?
No, I had no idea. When I was 18.
So you just took it.
I had no idea. I was told go to college because you got to go to college. And what was interesting, however, is that if you look, and I think the stat still holds fairly true, if you look at the CEOs of Fortune 50 companies, you'll find that many of them have, maybe not half anymore, but it used to be over half of them had a Bachelor of Arts degree because they learned how to talk, they learned how to think, they learned about worldview, they learned history, they knew that they've been fighting in Europe for 500 years, and so they probably keep fighting even after they start the euro. Mm-hmm. It gives you a good perspective, but then you have to go on and get another degree. If you're going to get a B, if you're going to get a worthless degree, be clear, you're going to have to get another
Nathan,
one.
I have a Bachelor of Arts.
Yeah, right. And you and all the other guys who ran the audiovisual carts now work here at Clear Channel.
No. Mm-hmm. I wasn't one of the
geeks, okay?
I wasn't one of the future TSA agents.
Yeah, okay. Now, so you better get a degree that you can actually do something with and learn. If it's learning how to think, if skills are going to have to be in the future, you're either going to have to bring judgment and expertise or something specific of which schmoozing and being able to market and sell something is a skill. But if you cannot bring that or some specific skill of a lawyer, a doctor, something that the world needs, then you're going to wind up that the middle class is going to disappear, and you're going to be working for the one percenters who are going to ever get bigger and bigger. Now, assuming that you can pick a decent degree, here's the first rule of thumb for anybody thinking about going to college. Do not take more student loans than the starting salary when you graduate. So if you've got a job and you know that the average teacher is getting $28,000 in a school, when you get out of the College of Education, do not take $60,000 of loans to get there, or you will never get out of debt, and you will wonder someday why you were crushed by it. I had somebody called the show recently. They had $120,000 in debt to get a doctorate in psychology, and they were making $35,000 a year. How do you live anywhere besides with your parents and pay off that kind of debt? You don't. All right?
Again, a college loan can't be discharged.
No, it can't.
Right.
Parents, here's the deal. Hate to tell it to you, but I'm going to put it in the boldest terms I can. There are no scholarships for retirement. There is no financial aid for retirement. You cannot help your children if you have not already been able to help yourself. Do not go broke. I've seen clients and people call the show who have literally gone through their IRAs. We had a woman. She helped her her son get through a very fancy, prestigious business school. Went through her entire IRA, a substantial six-figure. He's traveling all over the world. He lived in London. He lived in Paris. He was in New York. He went to San Francisco. He never sent his mother a dime. He's living the life of La Dolce Vita. She is broke. He's buying houses. Doesn't send mom a dime, and mom's not ready to say, "Well, kiddo, could you lend me $1,000 a month so I don't have to be eating dog food?"
Yeah, you know what though? I'd blame that on the parent for not teaching moral responsibility.
But most people out there are listen. I see it every day, Darryl. They'll take a home equity line of credit. They'll lend their kids money. When you talk about the $26,000, $27,000 that the student has, then the parents got all of a sudden the house that was paid off isn't paid off. And the reasoning is, well, if you look at the 1%, or if you look at the fact that 5% of the country, the top 5% earners are taking home 67% of the wages, you say to yourself, hey, I can't not play the game. I've got to make sure that my kid is in the running to be in the top 5%. And one of the things I know they have to have, regardless of anything else, just to get the resume looked at, is a college degree. I can't afford not to. And it gets back to the issue of, in this country, like Thomas Jefferson, he was a sexist pig, but what he said was, look, I'll be revolutionary so my kids can be farmers, sons can be farmers, so their sons can be business people, so their sons can be artists and poets. Somewhere along the line, as the world changed, we kept going towards artists and poets who make bupkis, and we didn't create the wealth so that we could have a generational change. That's why people come to this country. We've ruined the American dream. A house? Yeah, right. That's worth a lot of money today, isn't it? Yeah. Having your kids have it better off than you? I don't think so.
There's a frightening commercial. I don't know if you've seen it on TV, where it's a grandson sitting with his grandfather on the porch of a home, and he says, I want a house just like this when I grow up. And the grandfather's response is, I hope so.
Yeah,
I hope so.
I hope so. And you know what they don't tell you about the commercial? Grandpa is home living with the kids. He's not visiting. Yeah. He's got a little room upstairs down the hall on the second floor. And when the little grandson graduates college, if Grandpa's still alive, they're all going to be living back at home.
So, rule of thumb: never take out more in a loan than you're going to make in your first year.
Yep.
And parent. Make sure it's a marketable degree.
And don't go broke. Take care of your IRAs.
Is this usable information today, or what?
I would hope so.
All right,
it's that simple.
Drive safely. Nathan Bacharach of 55 KRC Simply Money, heard weeknights at 6:06 on 55 KRC. Tom has the news. I'm Darryl Parks, 700 WLW. 700 WLW. I'm Darryl Parks. Sadly, yesterday, Etta James, one of the great blues artists in American history, passed away at the age of 73. One of her great performances is on the blog at 700WLW.com. Search the word Darryl. And it is a service of Alarm Force. 26 in front of 11. And quickly to Steve in Reynoldsburg. Steve, you're on the big one.
I love that conversation with you and Nathan. I'm a former college professor. And let me tell you, when he started talking about those remedial courses, boy, did that bring back memories. I first encountered those about 40 years ago, and I used to teach one. And let me tell you, Darryl, I think you know this, Nathan certainly knows it, that is simply designed to put more butts in seats. Mm-hmm. It's a numbers game. We used to have an opening meeting every single semester or trimester, and the first order of business is how many majors do we have? It was a numbers game, because the more majors you've got, the more money to your department. And what we're doing in a general manner is debasing degrees by doing this, playing this numbers game. I'm going to tell you a quick story, and I'll get off here. Back in 1968, when I got out of the Army, I went back to the University of Iowa to graduate school. My professor in marketing was Andy Wallace, and he was a former Kentucky State Trooper who decided to go back and get a Ph.D. We're walking across campus one day, and he said this. He said, "Steve, you got to stick around and get a Ph.D." And I said, "Well, Andy, I'm satisfied with a master's." He says, "No, you can't do that." He said, "The bachelor's degree has replaced the high school degree. The master's has replaced the bachelor's, and the Ph.D. has replaced the master's. We've debased the entire system." He said, "You've got to understand that. The guy who got a college degree, a bachelor's degree 30 years ago, is at the same level as you guys who are getting your master's degree today." Mm-hmm. It's entirely been debased. And I've seen, Darryl, this get worse and worse and worse. And by the early 1980s, I got out. I just couldn't take it anymore. We were lying to ourselves. And one of the last meetings that I had, I was at a state university in Indiana, and we were having a meeting. We were trying to get accredited. It was in communications, by the way. And at the meeting, we had to cite what each of our immediate graduates was doing in the world, as best we knew it. Were they working in the major? What were they doing? So we came across the name of a student that I had. And he was a very talented young man. And another professor knew the answer to the question. I didn't know what happened to him. And the guy said, he's working at Kmart. And there was kind of a little titter in the room, like laughter. And one of the other guys who left the university the next year popped up and said, "Hey, Lou, that just proves it. All of our graduates can get jobs." And, the guy, Lou, was the head of the department. His face turned, like deep orange red. And that, to me, epitomized the entire problem. It's just ridiculous what's happening. And finally, about 14 days ago, here in Columbus, Joe Biden shows up to talk about higher education, which obviously is one of the two major constituencies of the Obama Democrats. And I read the entire piece in the Dispatch on the front page and the jump page of the paper, and I didn't see a single freaking suggestion on what to do about what you and Nathan were talking about, and what all these parents have to confront and all these students have to confront. And I thought to myself, is that glaring chutzpah? That you can come down here and say, "I'm going to talk about higher education," and you didn't offer a single suggestion to solve this problem.
Well, to your point, Steve, part of the problem, too, is an endless supply of money going into the system. Mm-hmm. When you look at the cost of college education, which is now increasing annually at about 8%. The average cost, and Nathan and I on previous shows, we've talked about this, that the average cost of a college education now per year is a little over $20,000. So if you're looking at $80,000 just over the 4 years, and you look, let's say you're in your early 40s, you're 41 years old, and you're saving for college, and you're thinking that to put your kid through college it's going to be $80,000. It's going to be double that by the time that kid is in school.
Yeah.
Let
me give you one more quickly, if I may. The other great comment that was thrown my way in the 1960s as I was getting ready to go back to school, I had an officer that I worked for in the Army as a full-bird colonel. He was just retiring. He went back to work for the Missouri Department of Education. As a matter of fact, he was a former school teacher. He asked me what I was going to do when I got out, and I said, "I'm going to take the GI Bill and I'm going to go back to school." And he said, "Oh, that's great. Steve, it's a union card." And I never forgot what he said, because about 10 to 20 years later, it finally sunk in. It really doesn't mean a damn whether you learn anything. It's what you can put on the freaking resume.
Mm-hmm.
And in a way, that's extremely sad.
Well, Steve, where did you teach?
I taught communications, advertising, a little bit of journalism with regard to news writing, that sort of thing.
How are we doing?
Oh, I think you're. I think you're doing darn well.
Right.
There are a few things that I could say, but I won't with regard to the English language.
Please don't, Steve.
But no, in all seriousness, I love the station. Obviously, I wouldn't be listening to it.
Well, I appreciate it, Steve. Have a wonderful weekend.
Thank you. You too.
We'll
Bye.
see you. 20 in front of 10. Hey, how about speaking of common people and people from the streets? Have you heard who is from the streets? I'll explain after the break. 700 WLW. UC takes on Hugs and West Virginia this afternoon. 2:33 is the airtime with the pregame show. Dan Horton, Chuck Meshock with the call, and that's right after Sports Talk with Ken Brew coming up at 12:06 today on the big one. Xavier at Dayton. That game at 1 o'clock on 55 KRC. Miami takes on Ohio this afternoon as well, 2 o'clock. And the NFL playoffs tomorrow, the Ravens and the Patriots at 3 o'clock. That's the early game. And then the late game, the NFC Championship, as the Giants take on the 49ers in San Francisco. Both of those games heard on Fox Sports 1360. I'm Darryl Parks, 513-749-7000, the number here. And I don't talk a lot of politics, but I have to get into the political debate that happened on Thursday night and the people that were just simply outraged at John King. I've met John King a couple of times. He has been here in the studios. I think they did a couple of stories with Willie. I believe it was after the whole Barack Hussein Obama controversy. And he's kind of a, how shall I put this? He's a Ron Burgundy type from Anchorman. But look, he had to ask the question. I mean, that was the elephant in the room question. You know, maybe he could have waited to maybe 30 minutes into the debate to ask the question, but he had to ask the question at some point. You know, for the people that had awful media talking about, open marriages and Eddie or Sloaney and Tracy yesterday talking about, threesomes and this and that. And look, we've all had, wasn't it Limbaugh that said it this week? We all have, for those of us that have ex-wives, the ex-wife is gonna have some information that may come out, and it's not atypical. All right, in our world, sadly, divorce rates are that high, but it's not atypical in our world. But then I was reading yesterday about all the people, millions of people who watched that debate from South Carolina on Thursday night, and I was one. I watched the first. I saw the so-called money shot of the debate, which was the opening question and the talking down of John King by Newt. But about 5 million people watched the debate on CNN on Thursday night, and that was incredible. So many people interested in the politics of this, right? Are you aware that over 6 million people watch Jersey Shore on MTV? So that's cable to cable. And then American Idol, although there are problems with American Idol, their viewership year to year is down about 44%. And American Idol on Fox had about 18 million people watching. Yes. And today is the primary in South Carolina. It's not. I know a lot of people think it's Tuesday. It's today. It's one of the odd primaries that have their voting on Saturday in South Carolina. And they did this years ago for historical. Here's the historical reasons of this. They did this so South Carolina has more of a say in the presidential elections. And when this was done about 3 decades ago, since then, since the nomination of Ronald Reagan in 1980, the person that wins the South Carolina primary is the Republican nominee. It's been that way since Reagan in 1980. All right, 513-74. Oh, I know what I want to get to. Are you ready, Matt? Let's hear from the man of the streets.
What you've listened to, in my view, and the Speaker's rendition of history going back to 1978, his involvement in Washington, is, in my view, a perfect example of why we need to send to Washington someone who has not lived in Washington, but someone who's lived in the real streets of America.
Well, let's see here. Your dad ran for president. You're worth $250 million. You ran a high-power private equity group, Bain Capital, that owns the big one. I'm a man of the streets. I grew up on the streets. And not, the other faux pas in misspeak this week of our friend there, Mitt Romney, is, and if you just put a mind's eye to this, it becomes funnier. And that is last year making $375,000 in speaking fees, and it not being that much. Not a lot of money. $375,000. Not that much. And I'm just picturing $375,000 in $1,000 bills in his pockets. Walking down the street. Heading over to a restaurant and pulling out a big wad of bills. Not that much. Not that much. All right, let's see here. We got Hex and Jim and Mark, and let's go to Tom in Deer Park, huh? Tom, you're on the big one. What's going on, buddy?
Not much. How you doing?
Good.
I was thinking about who I was going to vote for in the Republican candidate, the four candidates that's coming up.
In Ohio?
No, for presidential election.
Oh, okay. Which one?
Well, I've been listening to your radio show this week, and I've listened to Willie Cunningham. And he says that we have basically losers that are running for Republican nomination, and that it's a sure thing that Obama's going to get back in, So I was going to vote for Ron Paul, probably.
Well, why don't you?
Because Willie's got me so disgusted. Hell, I think I'm just going to go ahead and hook up with the Obama team and vote for him. Maybe Willie's right. Just go ahead and vote for Obama, because he sure the hell destroyed John McCain in the state of Ohio.
Well, Tom, one of the things I have to say about Willie is he's normally right about these things when it comes to politics. Willie is normally laser-like in his predictions of what will happen in elections, whether it's issues or whether it's with people. So, look, I'm none too pleased with President Obama. None too pleased at all. But you would think the opposing party would have gotten their act together by now. And they would have figured out someone that would be challenging to the sitting president. And they haven't done that as of yet. I'm Darryl Parks, 700 WL. Major controversy this morning in South Carolina, taking place at Tom's Country Ham House, as you may have heard on the news. Seems Romney and Gingrich were scheduled to be there at the same time. The apocalyptic battle at Tom's Country Ham House. Seems Mitch showed up a little bit early, about 15 minutes early, and Newt is there now. I'm sure there's some good eats happening at Tom's Country Ham House. State Rep Danny Bump is on the celebrity hotline. Danny, how are you?
Hey, I'm doing well out here in Adams and Brown County. I'll tell you, ODOT in the county garages here, Adams, Brown County, have done a great job. Roads are just fine.
All right. Well, that's good to know.
Well, we're out here campaigning for Paul Hall for Senate, but I wanted to call in because I heard you talking about Newt Gingrich, and, I think that is just appalling. We've got so many issues in this country, and CNN anchor there is going to ask him about his marriage over a decade ago. High unemployment, gas prices.
Correct.
I mean, you just go on down the list.
Well, Danny, it goes to the moral character of an individual, and that makes it important.
So we've got, 55, 60% of the population has been divorced. I've been divorced. I think.
I've been divorced. Yeah.
So that's the first question we're going to ask one of these guys.
Well, Danny, as you heard me say, I don't think it was appropriate to be the first question, but at some point it was the elephant in the room, and it had to be asked because that was the big news story. His ex-wife.
Yeah, and it's a good thing that we're still going through this, so that when we get to the end of it, we've got somebody that's already been vetted. Right. And we're not going to get something thrown on us like happened in previous elections.
Well, I agree. And look, I mean, here's my problem with Mitt Romney. All right, is it a big secret the guy's worth $250 million? I mean, what's the drip of not showing his tax returns?
I get that. I don't understand it. Governor Christie called on him, said, just release your taxes. Go ahead and do it.
Do it. I thought one of the great responses, another great response was from Gingrich in that debate when he was asked about his tax returns, and he said they were released about an hour ago.
Yeah.
I mean, he just totally defanged it. Well, Danny, go ahead.
Do you want a community organizer continuing to run this country, or do you want a successful businessman that has worked hard all of his life and been successful?
He's a successful businessman, but I will also debate that with you, Danny, because here's the problem. When you work in a business, and I don't know your background, but when you run a business, it's not a democracy. It's not about compromise. You follow me? See, somebody that's involved in politics like you, I think that takes a unique skill set, because it's all about that art of compromise. It's all about debate. And when you run a business, it's all about here. This is what we're going to do, and so be it. I mean, it's not for debate when you're running a company. Well, Danny, thanks for the call, and have yourself a wonderful weekend. We have Sports Talk coming up with Ken Brew at 12:06, and then it's UC basketball this afternoon as UC takes on Hugs and West Virginia here on the home of the Cats, and yes, the home of the Cincinnati Reds, 700 WLW.